Hello everyone, this is your host Nandini Ray, and you are listening to the Maitri podcast between friends, Conversations with Maitri. February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. Throughout February, organizations and individuals nationwide come together to highlight the need to educate young people about dating violence, teach healthy relationship skills, and prevent the cycle of abuse. Dating violence and abuse is a complex issue, and to prevent dating violence, it is important to identify those factors around us that are responsible for allowing dating violence and abuse to happen. And honestly, we need multiple discussions with multiple youth groups on this serious issue so that we can identify and prevent those oppressive conditions, whether it is societal or cultural, that make dating relationships actually toxic. And what can be more appropriate discussing this issue in this Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month? And I'm glad that we have four college students join me in finding the root causes of toxic dating relationships. Welcome, Sparsh, Nikita, Shreya, and Navin. Thank you so much for coming to our show. Before we jump into our conversation, please introduce yourselves to our audience.
Thanks, Nandini. I'm Sparsh, and I am a freshman at Santa Clara University studying computer science and business. And in this podcast, I hope to give my side on toxic relationships in our age demographic. And I hope to extend awareness to people who can relate to the experiences that I share in this podcast.
Mhm.
Hi, Nandini. My name is Nikita Vadaneni, and I'm currently a sophomore at the University of Washington, Seattle campus. I'm studying biochemistry and informatics, and I hope that this podcast can give an insight on how to avoid toxic relationships in our lives and how we can grow past certain stereotypes and fixed mindsets.
Wonderful.
Hi, my name's Naveen. I'm a freshman at SCU studying computer science and mathematics. I hope to use this podcast kind of to share my experiences from previous relationships to reach out to our generation and just make awareness of toxic signs of relationships.
Great.
Hi, my name is Shreya, and I'm a freshman studying at Purdue University. I'm pursuing an education in both business accounting and finance, and I'm hoping to pursue a profession as an attorney. Through this podcast, I hope to use my regretful past mistakes to help those that might be in the same position I was once in and encourage them to seek advice in doing so.
Wonderful. Let's start our discussion today with some shocking dating abuse statistics. Nearly 1.5 million high school students nationwide experience physical abuse from a dating partner in a single year. In 1 year, 1.5 million. That's a huge number. And 1 in 10 high school students has been purposefully hit, slapped, or physically hurt by a boyfriend or girlfriend. So it is obvious that dating violence is a serious issue, very serious issue, affecting millions of young people nationwide. And it starts so early. And as a parent, I can see that many parents may not realize that how early dating relationship starts. And many times, family members, especially in South Asian households, we don't talk about relationship with our children. So our youth community members may not be aware of the red flags in a dating relationship. But toxic dating relationships don't happen in a vacuum. So I'm hoping that in today's episode, we will be able to break down and analyze the question that why do dating partners abuse? Why even we are seeing dating violence in the first place? And so statistics wise, we see that most of the time girls are more likely to experience dating violence. And I don't know what is, I really want to know from you, what do you think? What is the reason behind it?
Yeah, I don't mind going first. So one of the things that I tend to see, in general in our South Asian communities or communities in general, is that a lot of your actions are reflected based off of how are we brought up and how are we raised and what actions are considered excused as a kid and how that affects our actions when we grow up. So I mean, it's pretty obvious. I often hear how different how there's how different the rules are applied towards girls and boys. So I think one of the main reasons why girls are more likely to experience any sort of like dating violence or toxic relationships in their lives is because a lot of the way our like childhood like rules are placed upon us. So for example, like I know that dress codes are a lot more stringent towards girls than they are to boys. And it kind of gives, everyone, not just girls and not just boys, but also girls, like the idea that, your clothes tell you how, like your clothes sexualize your identity. And in reality, that's not it. Like if I want to wear a crop top, it's because I want to wear a crop top. It's not because, I'm sexualizing my body. But it's like, but if a guy wears a crop top, usually that's looked like you look past that. Usually the school board and the teachers look past that. They like excuse it. And so what ends up happening is that girls are being asked to change and they're being looked at from a young age as something that they're not. And so when we grow up, it's basically like these small actions are intensified, and it happens where girls are being corrected for these things that don't make sense, and boys are letting all of these things go. And in the end, it seems that girls are more likely to experience these toxic relationships because they're changing, they're being seen in a way that maybe they're not trying to portray, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to hear a male perspective.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said, Nikita. And I think this really just stems down to what we're teaching children growing up, what our parents like grew up with. And I feel like a lot of our parents came from arranged marriages, and at our homes, we don't see what a healthy relationship may look like because it's a relationship that's normal to us. And even from a very young age, we see like men get away with a lot of little things, like you said, dress codes, and which imply that clothes sexualize bodies, which is actually not the case, which in turn leads to a warped mindset. And even in school and high school, during our sex ed classes, they did go over how to have safe sexual relationships with people, but they didn't go over how to maintain healthy relationships in general, which might also be a factor in why like everything sums up to girls being more likely experiencing dating violence.
I actually want to argue here because you pointed out that arranged marriage. So I don't think arranged marriage or love marriage has anything to do with setting gender norms or instigating dating violence or not or absence of healthy relationship. Because I believe that healthy relationship is possible in arranged marriage as well as in love marriage. Because in Western countries, if you see the statistics, then you will see probably a lot less arranged marriages are happening here. But statistics wise, dating violence, dating relationship is not less than from which country we see more arranged marriages are happening. So whenever something, any violence or abuse or inequalities are taking place in relationship, in intimate partner relationship, is because of power and control. And power and control can be instigated by imbalance in gender roles, and that is my personal opinion, because I have seen many violent relationship. Those were started as a love marriage or dating relationship, and then they turn into a love marriage. But I have seen many arranged marriages where people are perfectly okay respecting each other, and they are showing healthy relationship. But that's my personal opinion. I would like to know if you have any different opinion.
So Nandini, I actually like do agree with what you say, that maybe specifically an arranged marriage might not signify dating violence, or be more significant towards dating violence. But I wanted to add that I feel like a lot of, like South Asian, at least in, from what I hear in my family, they'll always say, oh, arranged marriages, they have way less divorce rates, here in the Western world, like over 50% of marriages end up like, being dissolved so soon. And, we look down upon it. But I keep thinking like, well, obviously there's the downside that so many people are splitting up with someone they saw life with. But at the same time, I kind of feel like it shows that we're putting our foot down. We're not letting the little things slide. Where I feel like in our culture, where arranged marriages are so common and divorce rates are so low, we're letting a lot of things slide underneath our rug. Like because dating violence, violence in general doesn't just, it doesn't just start off with physical violence. It usually starts off with mental abuse. It starts off with something small, and it might be that they make comments, and that soon escalates into very physical fights, which is none any part of that scale of violence is not okay. But I'm saying that I think why it's so common in our communities is because we say, oh, like it's okay, he's not going to do it again, and we shove it under the rug. So I think that's like one big point to be taken.
Yeah, that's true. That many people many times they are told to adjust, and they are told that family name is at stake if you break the cycle of abuse. If you break the relationship, then family will be ashamed for your actions. So, and it's a huge burden on women's or girls' shoulder to keep family name intact. So you are right that patriarchy, sexism, heterosexism, and misogyny embedded in social norms that in a way that lead to a disproportionate number of women victims. If you see the statistics, 1 in 3 girls in the US is a victim of physical, emotional, or verbal abuse from a dating partner, and nearly half, like 43% of dating college women report experiencing dating violence and abuse. It's a huge statistics, and it's no doubt that women are mostly a victim. So, do anyone else want to add anything, or should we go to the next segment?
I'd just like to add something more focused on like within the household of South Asian cultures. So I know in like most unhealthy relationships, it usually tends to be the male that's more like physically or emotionally like aggressive with the wife. But I just think in South Asian cultures, we aren't really brought up liberated. I'm just talking from the perspective of girls, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But Naveen or Sparsh, you could add on. But we aren't really brought up extremely liberated in most cases. So in toxic relationships, I feel like if we were to get into one, it's rare to see girls stand up just because the way that they're brought up, they're like told to be silent. Also, another thing is we're not really allowed to talk to boys in most cases. So when we do to that point in our lives where we get into relationships, like we just kind of don't know how to go about things at times. And so because of that, we can't really differentiate between toxic and non-toxic. And also upbringing, it's very like oriented around males. Per like example, like the father of the house is like they're known to have the most power. Even the mothers will listen to them in a lot of the cases. And then like if you have brothers or just boys in the family, they're like more often praised than the girls. And so I feel like a lot of that has to do with the way that we tend to be treated in relationships, and just like ways how like we're not able to get out of toxic ones, if that makes sense.
So, Nikita, what do you think? Do you think that South Asian culture, in South Asian culture, girls in general face more expectations from society as well, from their partners, as well from their partners?
So
And
I would personally say that South Asian girls do have to face a lot more expectations. Obviously, there are expectations for males as well, and I feel like Sparsh and Naveen will also go into it. But some of the expectations that I feel like a lot of South Asian girls have to deal with is it's a lot of times they're expected to stay at home and take care of the kids and do all the household chores, and also maybe go to work. And that's a lot of stress. So it's women in today's day and age, thank God, the times are changing and women are being allowed to work. I know that in the previous generation, that wasn't so common, where after marriage, it was expected that the women would stop working. But now, on top of being able to continue your career, you have to make you're still in charge of the home, which is, and it's a whole stress. Being a stay-at-home parent is like a job in itself. And unfortunately, like a lot of times this work isn't considered as valuable because we don't see a like an actual concrete payment. Like if I worked in a 9 to 5 job or any job, I would get my payment, in money. But when we take care of the kids, it's a very slow change. And this expectation that not only do we have to be able to be a good partner and work like well, the given expectations, but most of the time women are in charge of the homes, and that's also added. And I feel like that's a very big expectation to put on to any girls.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not only expectation, like I can share a story with you that I know a couple, both of them, are engineers, both are, they're earning six-figure salaries, and they actually went to same university. So, but when they're going out for their job and they are showing the whole world a perfect picture of gender equality, but when they are coming back home, but they are entering the moment they're entering home, a lot of expectations on that girl because she's the mother, she's the wife, and she has to take care of, she has to decide what needs to be done for the dinner, or it's kind of automatic expectation. She needs to decide everything for their children. And it is kind of, we are seeing that, if you go deep down, it will be actually normalizing abuse, that nobody is thinking that both of them, they have the same kind of demanding job outside. And when the moment they're coming in back in their home, why the again gender inequality is taking place so vividly. So you are absolutely right. So anyone else want to share anything?
Yeah, I think there's like a huge difference in priorities between like the relationships that we see, because obviously being raised in a much more like Eastern type of Indian household, the priority of a family becomes more centered around the children becoming more selfless, the parents pretty much giving up everything for their children. And when we come to the West and we see Western relationships, it's a lot more centered around the self, around making sure you're healthy, making sure, you and your husband are in a good relationship before you start a family. So I feel like seeing these two skewed things where like the expectation is that like no matter how the relationship between the two are, they're gonna have kids and make that the entire priority, but that ends up going to the woman at the end of the day, which becomes this huge abuse because of this like mix of cultures.
Hmm. And everything is related, right? So when someone is seeing power imbalance in relationship and gender inequality is taking place at home, maybe they are internalizing it knowingly or unknowingly. And they are showing that behavior when they're going out in their dating relationship. What do you think, that how do cultural expectations for boys impact dating relationship? Do you think it can impact anyway?
Yeah, I think generally in South Asian households, boys have a lot more freedom in who they're allowed to see. And generally, in my opinion, they are not as restricted by social constructs that girls face in South Asian households.
Mhm.
And something else to add on to that is that men are sometimes expected to be gentlemen. In one of my circumstances, from my personal experiences, girls can expect things from men and not reciprocate the same behavior. So, like, for example, if I were to be committed to someone and they expected that from me, but they couldn't reciprocate the commitment to me, I feel like that happens to boys fairly often.
Navin, what do you think?
Well, I also thought of, there's also the huge expectation of, or commonly there's a huge like monetary expectation from men. Like if you see a relationship between two people and like, let's say the woman's a doctor and maybe the man is not so successful or he's doing a lesser wage job, there's going to be a lot of talk in the background about like, oh, wow, like, why did she marry him? Like, well, why has that happened? Right? Like it's seen as a bad thing. So.
Yeah, exactly. And that can impact their that couple's relationship, right? Like maybe initially they don't have any problem with each other, and if the girl is earning a high salary and the boy is not, But when the community expectation, family expectations, and they start talking about this inequality, then it can hit. It can make an impact in their relationship. Don't you think so?
Yeah, Naveen, you bring up a really good point. My sister who was getting married about now, it's been 4 years now since she got married. But when she was doing, she got an arranged marriage, and in my family, I feel like now that everything is becoming more westernized, the way her arranged marriage worked was that her family would introduce her to a lot of potential suitors, and in the end, she would choose who did she like, and if they liked each other, then they would proceed onward to get married. And I remember when they were like starting to bring in a lot of these like possible suitors and these matches, a lot of them would reject her because she was a dentist. And so she was making far more than a lot of other, potential males were making. And the families didn't like that. So she was actually in that dating phase for a while before she actually got married. But, in the end, she still makes more than her husband, but it's all fine now because they've worked it out. But that expectation that the male has to make more than the woman is unfortunate, and I don't think that's an expectation we should put on our boys
Yeah,
or
absolutely. And
girls.
in our
Yeah.
in our culture, especially, um, that's also my personal view that in our culture, I have seen this thing happen more than other culture, like other Caucasian culture in Western culture. Western culture, people will not be surprised if a dentist is married to a construction guy. But in our culture, South Asian culture, that can be a huge topic of
Exactly. Yeah.
of discussion, and people, even the couple, they don't have any problem with each other. They, at some point, they will be so bombarded by different opinions, and so that it can impact negatively their situation, their relationship. So yeah, we have to. I mean, I don't know how many people will be listening to this podcast, and I'm hoping that they will think about these issues deeply, and if they can change something in their life, so that we can make our boys and girls ready for healthy relationship. And intimate partner violence is a serious problem, and that has lasting and harmful effects on individuals, families, and communities. So it's really, really important that all of us, we need to see seriously what is causing this problem and how we can change that culture, so that we can prevent dating violence from our community. So how do boys and girls both take part in making healthy dating relationships?
I think realistically speaking, we're not gonna get a lot of advice from our parents because at younger ages, probably before college in most cases, our parents are not going to want us to jump into like relationships. So
Mhm.
I think it's kind of up to you and like what you're learning from your friends and all that. So I think before you jump into any relationship or even the idea of it, you should have standards that you set for yourself that you're not going to be flexible with, kind of just blowing off, or maybe just like wait a little bit, kind of learn from like your friends' experiences and just think about like what kind of things you won't tolerate and all that. And
Mm.
hopefully if you have parents that do encourage it or are open to knowing about it, then obviously you can go to them, but that's just
Mm. That is the purpose of this podcast too, so that all of us, parents, children, all of us can think about this issue seriously, and we can do something to prevent that. No, right? So, Sparsh, what about your opinion?
Yeah, I think open communication is essential to making a healthy relationship between a couple.
Mm.
And having more open communication about the relationship itself is going to create a lot less drama, a lot less kind of bad influence on the relationship. And I think
Mm.
both the people in the relationship as a result will be on the same page about what expectations there are for their future together. And this will create an open environment where both can be open to change and involvement to make each other better during the relationship and eventually get married, hopefully. But something else that's very important, I believe, is to start from the roots and educate the children thoroughly on healthy relationships, having a good mindset. And going into dating, we should educate the children that they should take out all expectations and stereotypes they see from dating, like the gender stereotypes or any other stereotypes that are currently prevalent in society.
Yeah.
So, I agree with both Shreya and Sparsh, but I want to take like an example in my life. So this isn't a dating relationship, but it was a friendship relationship. And so, in my friend group in high school, we fought a lot. We had a lot of issues. And what I ended up seeing is when I would go to my friends for advice, they would mostly just agree with me. They would say, yeah, whatever you're thinking is right. Or, if I was thinking, maybe if I thought, maybe I'm overthinking about this, maybe this isn't such a bad like situation, maybe I got mad for no reason, they would just, agree with me because as young kids, I as a young adult, like that's the way we are. We don't want to start so much on, we ourselves are not very sure about, the world. And so we don't really give the best advice either. So I found that if I ever had any problems, I would actually go straight to my parents. I would tell them the entire situation and I would say, this is what's happening and I don't know what to do. And I had completely different parents. I had one parent who would tell me, side A, and my dad would tell me side B. And so I would hear all the different options of what I could do. And I felt very lucky to be in a situation where I felt like I was getting valuable advice. But in reality, I shouldn't be considered lucky. This should be the norm. So in order for us to, grow in our lives and our, friendship relationships, but also our dating relationships, we need to start having our parents be open to communicating, be open to understanding that relationships aren't perfect. Because I feel like when I say that I'm dating so early, I feel like a lot of, older generation will be like, oh, you're why so early? You're too young, in these comments. And so when we hit a fork in the road, it's like I feel like a lot of people would get those comments like, oh, well, this is what happens when you're dating so young. This is what happens when you don't really know what's happening around you. So instead of making those comments, if we can start having our parents be like, honestly, a friend in these situations, in a moment that we're, struggling with all of these other problems around us, to have someone who's more like a friend than a parent, I found so helpful. And if our parents, if the older members in the audience listening to this could be like how my parents were, that would honestly, I feel, make a huge difference. It would make a difference in the types of relationships that I get into. It would make a difference in what I consider excusable behavior and what I don't, because I'm seeing it from a view of, instead of an 18-year-old, but I'm seeing it from a view of a 45 plus year old. And they obviously do have a lot more wisdom. So I feel like, as Sparsh said, the open communication is very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Open communication between partners as well as between family members, really, really important. Because what you said, that when a high school teen is abused by another high school teens, and that teen is going for advice to other teens, so they have the same kind of experience probably. I don't think they will be able to help in a huge way. So yes, get a burden off their chest by talking to a friend, that's fine, but it is also important to have a open route so that they can reach out to any trusted adult, whether it is their parents or uncle, aunts, or teachers, who can understand them and who can share their pain and who can give them good advices so that they don't end up hurting again. So absolutely, I mean, this is everything is interconnected, and we all have responsibility. As a parent, what you were saying, I think we adults should have huge responsibility, to be good role models for our children, so that they can see what is healthy relationship at home. At the same time, we need to help our children to learn the skill to manage their emotion, control their anger, show respectful behavior to everyone, even before they start dating relationship. So and girls should be encouraged from the beginning to chase their dreams so that they can get same opportunity as their male counterparts. There's so many things are connected, and if we need to be very mindful so that we are, as adult family members, we are having an open communication with our children, and we are, giving them some resources or information that what are the red signals, so that whether they are dating now or not, at least they can be aware of those red signals, and they, if they are facing any of those red signals in their own relationships, they can have an opportunity to talk to someone and get support. So what you are saying is absolutely right.
Yeah, so just to like add a little like personal comment here, a
Mhm.
lot of like the lessons we're gonna learn to like make sure we have a healthy relationship is just gonna take time and a lot of effort to learn. It's not like we can like have a advisor, someone to talk to us, and like overnight we're gonna suddenly like know everything about a relationship and be able to produce like healthy communication. It's just gonna take a lot of time, and not every relationship is gonna be perfect.
Mm. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot of, it needs a lot of patience, understanding, but respect is the key. Mutual respect, understanding, open communication. Those are the keys, and and giving freedom to your partners. Like if you want to control their every move, then that relationship cannot be considered as healthy relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree.
So, all of you, if you want to share some tips for our community, that how can we make a culture where dating violence and abuse is not accepted, and what the necessary steps to change the toxic culture that allows dating violence and abuse in our community? Do you have any thoughts that what are the necessary steps?
I honestly think what Nikita was saying before was like the best for this case, just because I knew Nikita in high school too, and so I know how different both of our parents were.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that the way that the relationship she had with her parents was probably a lot more beneficial than obviously my parents were good. I'm not trying to say they're bad, but I just think because her parents, she was a lot more open with them, and they were also a lot more open to her. I think that would have been the best way I should have gone about high school as well. So yeah, that's just what I think.
Yeah, I think there are a few steps to change the culture that allows dating violence and abuse. And I think two of the most important steps is being open to discussing relationships with your parents or elders because they bring a different perspective on problems that may be present in the relationship or bring advice that your friends or other people can't because they know you personally. Your parents know you the best. And something that's also on a different note should be addressed is not making mental health in the South Asian community such a taboo topic. I think that everyone should understand that therapy is good for anyone and people should be open to therapy.
Mm. Yeah. Okay.
So my biggest advice to any boys and girls that are in a toxic relationship is to put your foot down. If you consider something past your boundaries, don't let it go. Talk about it, think about it, and reflect. And I know we make a lot of excuses. We say, okay, well, this is never going to happen again. He apologized or she apologized. Well, I would say, really take the time to reflect. Don't just take the apology. Don't just let the cycle continue. So I think for boys and girls, we need to start to understand what are our boundaries, what are we comfortable with, and then start putting ourselves to be a companion to another. And I feel like if we address the root cause to understand ourselves better, we would not be such a toxic person in a relationship. So those are the two things. So yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we ignore our gut feeling, that sometimes some people think that I'm not feeling okay, I'm feeling suffocated, but still I don't want to talk about it. There are so many people are like that, and they think that if I talk about it, people will not believe it, or people will make fun of me, or people will think that I did something to provoke. So there are many reasons people, whenever they're victims, they don't They don't talk about their abusive. They don't seek for help, and they suffer in silence. So we need to make a community culture where everyone gets that message that intimate partner violence, dating violence, domestic violence will not be tolerated, and everyone is standing firmly against it. And then probably one day we will see a different tomorrow. And I would like to add here some resources if listeners, if you and or anyone you know are in an unhealthy dating relationship, creating a safety plan can be very helpful. Whether you decide to end the relationship or stay, it's a good idea to empower yourself with the knowledge of how to act in different scenarios. And I would recommend you to go to Love is Respect website. It's www.loveisrespect.org. And they have a section on create a safety plan. Please read that. Also, whenever you have time, I would recommend you to check their relationship spectrum on the same website to see where your relationship falls. Unhealthy, abusive, or violent relationships can have short and long term negative effects, including severe consequences on dating partners' mental and physical health. But don't suffer in silence. There are many organizations that provide direct services to young people who are experiencing dating violence. As well as if you're an adult and if you need information for your young family members, you can also visit National DV Hotline, Love is Respect, VAWNet, VAWNET.org, VAWNet. There you will find a list of organizations, local as well as national, that work with teens and young adults. So, any last minute thoughts? Anything you want to add?
I just wanted to give a quick note to kind of defend your parents a little bit, because I understand that if our parents were to become open and better with their kids, it would become great. Like all relationship issues, like, or majority of them would be solved. But also, we kind of have to understand there's perspective of most of our parents are come from immigrant families and like very poor situations where they were just trying to get food on the table the next day. So their
Yes.
entire life was seizing every opportunity to just be able to survive. So whenever like their kids want to spend time doing relationships or something other than working, it just doesn't feel right with them because of how hard they had to work for survival.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I completely hear you because I am like your mother's age. So I completely hear you were trying to say. But you know what? Both of us, we need to do our best to learn from both cultures, Western and Eastern. And we need to do our best so that we can make our children happy and safe, most importantly, safe. Because we are not in our home countries, we are in here in Western countries, and our children are going schools with other children from other cultures. And so our job is to make sure that our children are safe, and especially in this kind of dating relationship. So it's important to have an open communication. Though I am from a different generation from you, but still I think that slowly we have to learn how to have an open communication with our children so that we can save them. So it's better to be safe than sorry, so that we can start discussing what can be the red signals of our intimate relationship and how to be safe with our children. So, thank you so much. Thank you all for this energizing discussion. And unfortunately, time is up and we have to pause here. But I'm sure we will bring more discussions on this platform. And I'm positive with multiple community dialogues and collective actions, we will be able to end dating violence and abuse from our community. Listeners, please remember you can play a key role in educating and mobilizing your community to eliminate oppressive patriarchal discourses and practices that are enabling partner violence and dating violence. Honestly, taking part in or listening to this kind of discussion will not only help us in challenging those harmful norms, but also reflecting on our own behavior. So, all of us must see what we can do at an individual level and at a community level to eliminate those harmful cultural and societal conditions that are causing dating violence and abuse. Bye for now. Stay safe and happy. Keep listening to the Maitri podcast Between Friends, Conversations with Maitri. Find all our episodes on SoundCloud and other podcast apps. Please like, share, and comment. Thank you. This project was made possible by funding provided by Santa Clara County Office of Gender-Based Violence Prevention.
This show is for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as legal advice. Always consult an attorney for legal advice. Views expressed by guests of the radio show are individual opinions and not endorsed by Maitri.